Galileo Russell, founder of Hyperchange, star of Hyperchange TV. Did I introduce you correctly, bro? Is that the best?
Yeah, that's perfect.
I
What
feel
up?
you. What up?
Honored to be on the Cam Meekins show.
Dude, honored to have you. Honored to have you as one of the early guests. Recording this before we're even live with a real episode out, so that's a lot of trust in me in what I'm doing. So I appreciate that.
Totally.
We were talking before we got on. You know, I have really been admiring what you've been doing with Hyperchange and just everything that you do for a minute. So being able to bring you on has kind of been definitely the episode I've been looking forward to the most, for sure. So,
dude, that's awesome. And I have a kind of a mutual respect where like it's so funny to see my world of like this finance stock nerd, but I'm also putting out videos on YouTube, so I get to connect with like rappers and all, you know, people doing stuff that I think is so out of my world, but so cool and fascinating. But also like we're both putting out this online content, distributing it to our fan bases, kind of our entrepreneurs in our own way. So different worlds, but kind of the same world in parallel.
It's kind of, you know, I don't want to speak for you, but it feels like to me the Hyperchange kind of concept in a way, where it's like we're in this new time where people are being creative. The lines are blurred between industries, between all these different avenues that people kind of create and work and exist online and put out content and everything like that. And that seems to be your whole, you know, part of your whole like kind of vision of kind of what you've been seeing happen over the last decade and your Hyperchange idea. I'm curious if you can kind of break that down a little bit and maybe let people know a little bit about what you do.
Totally. I mean, you know, hyperchange is this theory that I came up with that like, you know, hyperchange, the world's changing faster than ever and every industry is kind of getting shattered. I even wrote a book called like A Scheme of Consciousness. It's kind of like an unedited poetry kind of book about this, but exactly what you said. Like, I think, you know, people are talking about life sucks. I hate the president. You know, I really believe this has never been a better time to be alive and be an artist. And we're going to go through an incredible creative renaissance 2.0 right now. And as like OD as that sounds, that's firmly what I believe. Like you as a rapper and as just kind of a, you know, creative, artistic person who wants to be out there has all these tools available. YouTube, podcasts, the ability to monetize them is getting easier and easier. So I just think it's the golden era for this artist, entrepreneur kind of person to kind of do it all, you know, make your music, do your podcast. And that's what really inspired me of like, wow, like I was investing. I didn't vie with anybody in investing school. I went to NYU. Everybody's trying to go to Goldman Sachs. Like I came from like reading the Warren Buffett book. Like I'm about to find the next great company and like put all my money into it. We're going to change the world. And these guys are like, how can I get the dopest internship? You know, which oil company can I raise money for?
Yeah.
And screw over. And I hated that. And so I kind of veered my own way and started making YouTube videos about stocks, even when that wasn't really a thing, but kind of just found my own lane that way of like, yeah, I don't have to work for a bank to have ideas. I don't have to work for a hedge fund. I can just put them out on the internet and these tools exist where I can monetize that work in a different way. And I always thought 1 million followers is going to be worth more than $1 billion managed. And that is that's the contrarian take I have with everyone else in finance right now.
I like that.
So I don't manage money. I only work for myself. And so we'll see how it goes.
So what do you think were the seeds that kind of planted this change that you're talking about? I mean, we went through a lot of different things over the last few decades, you know, the housing crisis, the innovation in technology. Is it all this stuff kind of culminating together that's led to this new kind of peak in technology that's creating the world that you're talking about? Or what are the forces at play that have led us to here?
You know, really simply the internet. I think we just take for granted how big of an innovation that is, that you can connect with the fact that I can connect, communicate, and do business with 7 billion people instead of the 7 people in this room. That is just the effect that's going to play out for our entire lifetime. And I still think we're in the infancy of realizing how disruptive it is. And so, you know, to me, that's just boils down the entire opportunities. Everything can be traced back to software and the internet are eating the world. And, you know, you don't need the A&R exec to find you, to put you on the right stage, to go through, you know, 10 BS suits to get your music heard by anybody. You can just put it out on an online platform. And that's why I say it's like the golden age where there's no barriers. The only limit of your potential is like your hustle and your imagination is what I say.
Totally.
And so, you know.
Yeah, you know, we were talking a little bit before we pressed record, I think, where we were talking about there's similarities between your world and my world. And it reminded me of this concept actually that I've talked to a lot of people about over the years, which is like, because, you know, I started making music in 2010, 2011, putting it out on YouTube, putting it out on Facebook. The hustle for me was figuring out some unique way to use the internet to create a fan base without having to go the traditional route of getting the A&R interested, getting the music industry interested. Because I was in Boston, there wasn't a big music industry presence anywhere except for Los Angeles, a little bit of New York, which doesn't even really exist today in New York. And so that was the early days of people figuring out how to be independent as artists and put music out, build a fan base online with just the basic tools of Facebook and YouTube. This was before Instagram, before SoundCloud, before any of that stuff. And it was just kind of a connect the dots type of thing. And I've had this conversation with a lot of people where that was just indicative of the bigger change that was coming in the decades that follow, where everything is going in that direction. And music is one of those things where it's a relatively simple product because, one person can make it. It's a 3-minute song. It's not incredibly complex when you kind of break it down. It's just someone being creative and making music. And we're talking about, a very simple MP3 file. It's small, right? So all these various things led to music being kind of like the proof of concept for this innovative change that's happening where people are using the internet to get their ideas out, to build their following, to build their business, as opposed to going the more corporate industrial route. And with music, it's going, through the traditional music channels. You're bypassing all that stuff and you're just using the internet. And I feel like that was really the proof of concept. And now it's 2020, about to be 2021. We've seen other shoes drop. The film and TV world is really going in that direction now. And now I think one of the more recent changes, which I think you're absolutely a pioneer of, and just like I'm comfortable saying that me and other artists from my time period were pioneers of figuring out how to build kind of internet, social media, music followings in 2010, you are really a pioneer of this kind of new financial media, leveraging the internet, leveraging, YouTube and all the other platforms. And I really think that, those two industries are very related in that way. And curious kind of how you feel about being in that position where you're kind of on the forefront of this disruption that's happening to financial media and finance in general.
Yeah, it's crazy. But before even that, what you said that really got me thinking was the MP3 file. That's such a low amount of data. So It was like music was this way. And then like you're saying, video was kind of the next thing as the internet's ready. And where I think this goes is music to me is losing competition to other digital media because it's not visual. Like, yeah, music videos, but it's just like the guy kind of rapping or whatever. I think the future is, your music is a world. Could you get a VR, are we being immersed in a new world for 3 minutes? That's a full story. Like, I feel like the music videos are kind of like a evolution, but are still not music's true final form. And it's been dictated by this bandwidth of like data and compression that the internet can handle. And so I'm really excited to see where that goes. And in terms of the financial media, I totally feel alone. Like, I still feel like I'm the only guy really doing it. And a lot of people will make, Tesla videos now that Tesla blew up. I was the only guy pounding the table there on Tesla, and then it blows up and you got 50 other YouTube channels doing it. But this kind of like me documenting my own investing journey is such a weird and unique business model. But I don't know, I just really feel alone at it. But I also am so excited that like my smartest people in my industry are still working for Goldman Sachs and hedge funds and like are fear-based in their career decisions and say, what could go wrong if I don't get that job my parents want? What could, what if I'm wrong and I made a YouTube video and my stock pick was wrong? And so I started with this mentality of like this, you watch CNBC or any financial media, they're never wrong. It's always, I know everything. I'm better than you. I'm in a suit. So I'm like, no, I'm going to be in my bedroom in a t-shirt, just telling you what's up and telling you I'm probably going to be wrong because I'm a dumbass and I'm 23 or whatever, And so to me, that just like, it was the show that I wanted to watch and felt like I needed to exist. And so, I don't know, it's kind of been crazy working like, I'm just kind of baffled that it's worked out and that YouTube ads and Patreon and like, frankly, like I make more money from just investing than the show because my portfolio is going up so much. But I still feel like we're in the early days and like the karma coming back by having, that 1 million follower goal versus the $1 billion under management goal is to me like just such a big opportunity that people are still not understanding. And like if Warren Buffett was alive today, I think he would be doing a YouTube channel.
Well, he is alive, but.
Yeah, actually, I've been saying that. He's like my hero mentor. He is alive, but like his ideas are not relevant
I totally.
Yeah, like you get what I mean. But fuck,
Of course,
I'm feeling
of course.
horrible. I said that shit.
I
Like,
just listen. We care about facts here on the Cam Meekins show. I'm
uh,
just kidding. I'm just kidding. Yeah, no, I totally hear you. I mean, what do you think motivated you to kind of go that route as opposed to, because I understand you had a long background of getting into investing when you were younger. You went to school, studied finance, did the whole thing, and had a little bit of time working at startups and working on different small funds and things like that. What drove you to say, I don't need any of this? The 1 million followers is more valuable than the 1 billion under management. Because I think a lot of kids who get interested in finance, like you have, obviously their dream is to be, the big shot hedge fund manager with a ton of money under management. And that's, the only route to really like the rock star finance life.
yeah. And like but how many people do you see getting into the music game because they want to get rich and famous?
Right.
They're never going to make it. And so that's the way I kind of look at those people of like,
No, it's corny as fuck, for sure. For sure.
It's
but
all about passion.
Yeah.
Like as lame as that is, it's really about the passion that differentiates. And that's why I say I feel like I'm so alone, because I feel like this like actually wanting, we're ADD culture. Everybody's day trading now. It's like, nah, like I'm so boring. Just like buy Tesla stock for 4 years in a row and like never sell it until I needed to buy my Tesla,
Yep.
And so there was also like the internet, when we're talking about distributing music. One of the first things that led me to Tesla is I did this report at NYU about social media engagement of every single automotive brand. So you could see that the likes of Tesla's Facebook page are like twice as much as Mercedes, growing 10 times as fast. And on every post they have, they're getting 20 times as many likes per follower. And then I'm watching Mercedes is paying to get all these followers. So this was the start of like the internet not only democratized like communication, but also democratized information and data. And so forever, Warren Buffett used to have to send in a slip to get a SEC filing at his home like months later in the mail. You can click in 2 seconds and read the SEC filing of any company. Your Berkshire Hathaway of 20 years ago that made Warren Buffett billions, you with your computer have like a gazillion times more tech than he's ever had.
Right.
And so I think this is kind of like the true democratization of finance, is where if you're really smart, it's kind of like music. If you're really good and put it out, it'll blow up. If you're really smart and have the good ideas, like you can make money. The data's out there. And while every hedge fund is still looking at financial statements, I'm like digging my teeth in this financial media data, and I even published it, and it's like, bro, like how is this even a question? Tesla's getting hundreds of millions of free marketing because everybody can't shut up about their product, and Mercedes paying hundreds of millions of dollars for ads, and still nobody's talking about it.
Right.
So that's when it hit me in the face of like,
Totally. So do you think that we're actually in a completely fundamental shift in the stock market and in financial markets in general, where basically a lot of the rules are kind of out the window because of this change that you're talking about? And how do you make sense of that now? I'm seeing, even with the coronavirus situation, right? Like the forces that are affecting the market now, obviously I don't have the experience of seeing the last 100 years of the stock market, but from the research that I've done and just the understanding that I have of the market and macroeconomics, it seems like we're in this uncharted territory of incredibly active, central banks, putting money into the market, a really interesting time with the reserve currency, right? And the way that technology has changed access to information and the way people can make decisions on investing. These are all at the same time creating a new dynamic that we've never seen before. And so how do you make sense of that and, kind of take a value-based approach on the market when the old fundamentals are kind of irrelevant, because it's a different market when you think about the way that the Fed, engages with the market now, and all the other factors that we've talked about, and the change in technology and the democratization of investing in that way, because it's not as much of a situation where it can be the information can be gatekept, if that makes sense. So yeah, I guess I'm just curious, like, what your thoughts are about that, because I've been seeing it and been thinking this is kind of just a new time for financial markets, and I'm trying to figure out how to make sense of it, because it kind of feels like it's just going to be this amazing situation where it just keeps going up and up and up with amazing technology companies and, companies that you talk about in your hyperchange system. And those are the new blue chip companies that are just going to, grow to $10 trillion market cap values. And, and I guess that's,
like, it seems clear to you in some ways of like this new tech is coming.
Right.
And you hit me with a lot there because I'm like,
yeah,
the
I know,
Fed,
but that's the point. It's a little bit,
it's
it's complex right now,
It is. And it's always complex and it's always kind of a shit show. Right. And I think that's what people need to accept is like, no matter, it's '08, it's '11, Greece is falling off a cliff now. It's ridiculous. Euro bonds are at zero. There's always something to kind of sink your teeth into. But I always think I'm seeing so much opportunity than ever. And I try and get people out of the noise. Like there's so much noise out there. There's so much BS. We built something called hyper charts, which like literally just takes the financial data of these companies and puts it into charts for you, which is so simple. And there's no Galley's idea, no opinion on that. It's just the numbers. And so I still think Warren Buffett is actually as relevant as ever today. You just got to look at it through a different lens. And so all value investing is value investing. And so it's extremely complex, but like Tesla, they're losing money. We've never seen a company be able to lose money and then start making so much money so quickly. That reversal from losses to massive profit. And why is that? It's like the technology of Tesla. The internet's connected. They can sell their products faster. Like there's a gazillion things that kind of go into why that is. But it's still that same frame and that true north of all investing is value investing. Like what price am I paying versus what price I think it's worth? And how do I calculate what this thing is worth? And I think as much as it seems like we've lost all value investing in rules, to me, it's never made more sense and never been clear. And I never try and impose my opinion on the market of like, we're ridiculous. It's a bubble. You're wrong. It's like, no, I'm wrong. The market is right. And it's like Gary Vee. Like, I love his kind of mentality of like, stop like complaining and trying to fight the market. You just kind of got to accept it. And I think a lot of people have that. But the more I rationalize this, like you're saying, so we have 50 car companies. People are like, okay, well, Ford's worth 50 billion, Tesla's worth 500 billion, and Ford sells more cars. How does that make sense? But Tesla's making more money per car. And then you think about what does the future of transportation look like in 5 years? It's not 50 car brands with 1% of miles traveled for each car brand. It's a robo-taxi, an autonomous Tesla that's 10 times cheaper than your Uber, and that's going to totally disrupt everything. You're not going to want to buy a car. And everybody's only going to be driving around in one type of car, and it's the Tesla, and the profit per miles driven just went up 10x, and they have 50x more miles driven than any other car company. All of a sudden you do that 50 times 10, that's 500. It should be worth 500 times more than Ford per vehicle produced or whatever. And then that valuation makes sense. And so every situation is super complicated. And I think a lot of this euphoria and bubble mania, like everybody wants to be an investor. Everybody's trying to be invested in the stock market. But what I always try to tell people is like, bro, put in your 10,000 hours. You're going to be garbage at investing if you just buy your homie's favorite stock and you just get into it and think you're going to make money. Like I just got my sister into investing and she's like, telling me how Etsy stock went up because she bought it and she's so smart because it's up 6%. I'm like, you're an idiot. Like, you know what I mean? Like you're going to have to lose money 10 times. I lost my life savings so many times before I got good in investing. And so that's kind of one thing I like really try and cautious young and new people in the game of like, this is like a skill. Like, do you want to be good at music or do you want to be good in investing? Like you can't do it all in some ways, or like maybe you can do two, but you can't. I think that's what's really lost about investing is too many herd mentality, following what other people thinking, reading things from people who aren't rich and don't know what's happening and taking it as fact.
Yep.
And yeah, so like, I don't know. I kind of, I feel like I've in some ways like abandoned the Robin Hood culture because I hate, like I love that everybody's trading, but I hate that mentality of like, we're going to get really rich quickly.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really dangerous mentality to have. I guess I'm just wondering if you agree with the concept that, fundamentally things have changed because of those points that I mentioned. And so therefore, the next few decades of financial markets, will just be under different circumstances.
I would say evolved maybe.
Yeah, evolved.
And it's always evolving.
Right.
So
right.
People that think it'll return to normal, I'm like, no, it's getting crazier. That's what I see happening. And it'll just in perpetuity.
Right.
And that's what I love about financial markets is like the next great book that will rewrite the rules of book value, P ratio, price earnings to growth, my ratio, years to payback, like is waiting to be written. Like every financial theory is waiting to be disrupted. It's not like science or physics where there's this law that's the truth no matter what. Like it's just theories that people put out there. And like I love the Steve Jobs quote of like, look around at everything built like everything around you is built by someone who wasn't any smarter than you. And so I think if you think about that with financial markets, and it was 50 years ago, pre-internet, and then there's just that legacy. You just have these old rich people who are really resistant to change and got rich on this system that does this, formula that doesn't work anymore. And so that's kind of, those are the people saying the system's crazy and the Fed's ridiculous. But I just think they're old and they're missing the boat of like people like you and me who are like, we want to buy, future technology companies, and we'll pay a huge premium for that because we see that growth.
Totally.
And that's just a different new mindset.
Right. Totally. So what got you into Tesla specifically? Was it, the fact that Elon is such a visionary? Is it the underlying fundamentals of the company and the intrinsic value of the company that you saw? I'm curious how the dots connected between you being, the young kid that you were, really into finance and investing, and then, the focus on the new technology and Tesla specifically. Did that just gradually happen over time, or was there a moment when you were in college and you saw the writing on the wall? Like, how did that happen for you?
Yeah, great question. My motto is the bigger the problem, the bigger the opportunity. And so I've always seen climate change as like growing up in Seattle, super climate friendly, like just this massive problem that our cars are burning fossil fuels and our energy system is just fossil fuels. And like this needs to change, and like this needs to hyper change. And this is a huge problem that is an equally massive opportunity to create one of the world's largest businesses to usher us into this clean tech era. To me, this is why I say people like, you want to know some really crazy things like Jesus Christ, Steve Jobs. Those are two names that will be forgotten relative to Elon Musk when it's all said and done, because you want to talk about the savior of humanity, getting us off fossil fuels single-handedly, getting us all to electric cars. We're going to have solar roofs on all our houses. We're going to have batteries. We're not going to have to import dinosaur juice from across the world. So when I found out about, and Elon had this written in a master plan, and one of my other big rules in investing is owner, operator, founder. Like companies where it's like the CEO comes in, they're paying him 10 mil, it's not his baby, like that never works. You want someone like Elon Musk who's sleeping on the factory floor. It's ridiculous to me that the media grilled him for sleeping on the factory floor, but I'm like, dude, this is exactly the guy I want to invest in. Like I think he's once in 1,000 years Edison type, not only an incredible inventor, but an engineer, but someone who actually brings those inventions to reality and hits them and has millions of people, realize that invention of the electric car and then create billions of shareholder value. Like people they don't accept the fact that this is such a unique individual kind of breaking all the norms of all businesses.
Well,
and so
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. And so that's kind of the lens I'd at. Like, I don't give a shit about Elon Musk. Like, I'm not an Elon Musk fanboy. I'm just like looking at the math of his accomplishments. And I'm like, dude, this dude is literally LeBron James. And the number 2 guy is a kindergartner. And that's GM versus Tesla right now. So of course and LeBron's 48 and GM's, 65, their CEO. So even the age, Elon Musk has got, it's like being a 23-year-old basketball player. He's got his next best decade ahead of him. And so you add that up to Tesla, and I read their master plan of like, I was doing this case and debate class of like genetically modified tubes of algae in the desert. We're going to get biofuel to run every single car. And like, we'll only need, half of the Arizona desert to have our whole transportation system. And then I see Elon Musk, my mentor in high school, gets like a ride in the Roadster, gives me this Tesla hat. And he's like, dude, you got to check this out. Like, it's way cooler than your debate thesis. They're actually just going to build sexy electric cars, use that money to build a cheaper electric car. And it was much more than like a car. It was a car that had a why behind it and a mission behind the whole company of like, those people who bought the toys for rich people, the $250,000 Roadsters, the 1,000 of them, those people all subsidized the Model S, which subsidized the Model 3, which is going to subsidize the $25,000 car, which is going to bring this technology down to every single person. And when I think about, my investing, investing is value investing. So when I think about the technology that Tesla's building, how much value does that have? Well, getting everybody around safely and cleanly is a really big value. Getting everybody sustainable energy for really cheap on the roof of their house is a huge value. And so literally $2 trillion industries at once. Tesla was like a $3 billion company when I started following it. Like, it just kind of, it clicked. And I had this vision of like, I walk down the street in Manhattan and every single car is polluting and every single building is not collecting energy and they're importing this juice from halfway around the world. And it's just fucking ridiculous. And it's not the future. And Elon Musk is there pounding the table with this perfect vision. And so that's kind of like, it's just so inspiring, honestly, to be a part of like that movement. you know?
Totally, totally. No, it is inspiring. That's one of the reasons I really wanted to talk to you, because I know you're such an inspired guy and excited about this stuff. And I just think that's amazing. And I think we need to have these type of conversations to just get more and more people thinking in this way, and just realizing that this change is happening. You know, I know you talked about in your book that you wrote that you thought it was ridiculous that lettuce was coming in from Texas to New York, when you could have a rooftop farm bringing lettuce into that Whole Foods in 25 minutes. And so I just what you were just talking about reminded me of that point, which is there's a lot of inefficiencies in our world right now that just kind of happened. It just cycled out of control at one point, right? And so then when you have a guy like Elon Musk, and to go back to one of your points where you were saying like the media was shitting on him for saying he puts 110 hours in a week or whatever it was, like people can make their own choices, right? And when you're a guy who's such a visionary like that, like he can choose to put that time in and just create these things for the world, and that benefits us, right? Like we all only have one life. If he wants to live that life, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But these inefficiencies that are just all over the place. There's 100 different solutions to them, right? And so it's not about it's not as much about coming up with the most perfect solution on paper as it is about who's going to go out and actually execute the ideas. And I think Tesla is an example of a company that's been executing, and it's going to continue to execute for years on that change. And that's one of the things that really kind of inspires me, or attracts me to the story, and why I like watching your videos and learning more and more about all this stuff that's going on. So yeah, I don't know. That's just my take on it, but.
Yeah, I feel blessed, honestly. I'm like, dude, like being that investor financial nerd and getting to follow Elon Musk's company from day one, like just living the dream out here.
Totally. It's certainly a wild
and like
time,
I kind of
right?
want to, like, the side of Elon that people don't know. Like I've had the real fortunate opportunity of meeting him a couple times, and like it just kind of really grinds my gears. Like people like say he's an asshole or like hate on him because like at the end of the day, I really want to just push this narrative of like he's just such a brilliant, nerdy inventor, and like honestly just a really cool, nice, thoughtful guy, and like really one of the most nice, thoughtful people I've ever met. And like that to me goes a really long way. And like I like to do business with trust, with handshakes, who people are in it for the right reason. And like the fact that Elon Musk like listened to me and let me on the conference call, and like actually like just because I'm I don't have the experience or I'm not as old as or whatever, like he still listened to me because my ideas were good. Like that is something I'll always take with me, is like, wow, like that you like I don't I almost look at him as a mentor, even though I don't really know him that well, but
Yeah,
like
sure.
it was just so different from like someone in his position to like listen and like give a shit. And that I think is the side of Elon Musk that not enough people know about, that to me is equally inspiring as what he does, is how at that level of fame and whatever, he's still like that humble, chill, cool, just extremely respectful, down to earth dude.
Well, he seems extremely accessible too, right? Like he's relatively, active and down to like reply to people on Twitter and everything. I don't understand, like,
Yeah.
where does that negative rep come from? Like, did that stem from like specific situations, or because I'd never thought that about him, but I've heard that before too, and I don't get that.
It's really sad. I don't even want to spend that much time on it. There's a huge amount of people who are betting on Tesla stock to fail.
Yeah.
And we're frankly like, I've talked to billionaire hedge fund managers in their office, David Einhorn, and it's just like these dudes are spreading narratives that are ugly. And like there's billions of, literally tens of billions of dollars on the line betting on Tesla to fail. And their playbook is to put out bullshit articles.
Yeah.
And they almost kicked Elon Musk out of the company. They voted him out as chairman. So there's been a lot of, and it kills me because I don't even get it. I'm like, dude, like people love to hate on somebody who's successful. Like Jeff Bezos has a quote, like, if you never want to get hated on, never do anything new.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. Yeah.
Like, so I love that, but it's just like a guy who's trying really hard to put his life savings into this company. Like, so is it me as an entrepreneur? Like, I don't know how you feel, but I'm like, bro, how can you hate on a guy who like asks for nothing, put all his own money into it, works his ass off to try and make the world better? Like, Like, what have you done? That's what I always ask people. It's like,
Right.
bro, what are you doing for climate change? Like,
Right.
stop hating. Like, dog, like,
No, facts. I mean, there's a lot of different mentalities out there. I mean, obviously, there's probably some people who have financial interests in seeing him have negative press or something like that, and so there's so much manipulation of the media when it comes to that stuff at a high level. But I think when you think about the idea of people hating on people because they're extremely kind of successful and maybe different and weird, I think it's just a mental thing for those people. I mean, there are just a lot of people that use social media now to just like put out this negative energy on people that are doing stuff. And
right?
It's really fascinating, and that's probably always been the case. Like there's probably always been people chirping, whenever someone was doing something successful, but now we just have access to it more, and we see. But it's such a crazy thing, because then when you are someone who's trying to do something, you're trying to put your music out, or you're trying to create a YouTube channel, or you're trying to be the next Elon Musk or whatever, you're constantly bombarded with these negative comments and negative energy. And I think that most people who have the self-confidence and the vision to go out and actually build something for themselves also have the confidence to say these comments are completely irrelevant. But there is a little something that kind of probably gets to you a little bit when you just see that stuff all the time. And it's so fascinating why, so many people spend, their energy on that. But I think it's just the human condition at the end of the day.
Totally.
For some
and it
people.
makes me sad, but it's like all you can do is focus on your own positivity,
Right.
And spreading that message. And I've really tried to even I'm like, if I'm going to send an angry text or angry tweet, like I try and not send it. Cause I'm like, bro, in 5 minutes, you're just going to regret that. I'm like, why did you put that negative energy into the world?
Right.
Like, I don't know. So I'm hoping that will change, because I hate seeing that on Twitter. Every time I tweet, people are like, bro, like, you suck.
It's just easy. It's easy for people to say things through these mediums, but it's just, we're just more aware of it now. And so I think that can make you feel a little bit more comfortable about it, if that makes any sense. But
if it makes you feel better, it got to Elon. Like, he was rattled about the shorts, and he was tweeting back at him. And I think that's half the trouble he got into, is because he was so personally like, fuck you, this is unfair.
Yeah.
That it just got to him. And I really during that time, I'm pounding the table, bro, Elon, fuck the shorts, don't engage, let's just do it, we're gonna crush it. But even Elon Musk had to send a couple tweets and be like, bro, fuck you.
Yeah, right.
He dropped the shorts product.
Yep.
It's just a troll on them.
Well,
so
that's amazing though.
It gets to happen to all of us.
Did you see this news about the guy who's claiming that they made alien contact with the Galactic Federation?
Oh, is it the ex-Israeli guy?
Yeah.
And Rogan posted on IG yesterday. Yeah. I love Rogan's alien. Dude, I'm on board, bro.
I mean,
aliens are here.
Aliens are definitely here. Aliens are definitely here. I'm just curious, why would they just pick the United States and Israel to communicate to? That's kind of I mean,
right? That seems kind of greasy.
I don't know, dude. It's just I just feel like it's really, really that I don't know if I believe that. But I do believe the aliens are real, and we might find out that they are real in our lifetime for sure. And I think that the government might know that we've had for sure UFO situations. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and it's bro, extrapolate technology. Look at in 1,000 years.
Right.
We have UFOs, so we're gonna go to Mars in 5 years.
Yeah, and right. Because it's exponential growth, right? I mean, that's that. You want to talk about real esoteric hyperchange concepts, right? If you think about the exponential growth of technology, and then you think about artificial intelligence, then you think about the idea that everything could be quote unquote a simulation, right? What's the difference between what we're living and a simulation if we feel like we have our own free thought and our own free will, and I pinch myself and I can feel it? What's the difference if that's a simulation, or if that's, just whatever else we want to call our existence and the universe and life, starting at the Big Bang.
And it's if we have a simulation, how much does it suck? Because we're playing this video game to live on Earth, to go back in time, because this is so much more fun than whatever the real world is. And so it's Ready Player One or whatever,
Right.
All my philosophies boil down to enjoy the moment and make the most out of your life, because
Totally.
that's the only thing I can count on. But I also am like such a big believer in aliens and like the idea that there's other worlds out there. It's like, dude, and the technology thing to me totally makes sense. Like, if aliens are out there and they were like 1,000 years before us in civilization, they have the tech to do the UFOs or whatever, maybe 10,000 years.
Because if we were in the 1600s and then you flash forward to 2020 and we're talking over this, giant screen where you're right here and I've got this crazy camera, that's absolutely bonkers to someone,
yeah, it's like
400
magic.
years
We're like
ago.
halfway across the world.
Yeah,
but we're just
it's insane. And so, 1,000 years from now, what's the technology going to look like? But there's also, I think, the concept that technologically we're not able to get that advanced before something catastrophic happens.
true. And it looks like we're getting close to blowing ourselves out in like 1,000 years, bro. We'll probably
nuclear, meteor. There's a lot of different, global warming.
I'm just as scared as like Twitter too. Like,
yeah, no, facts. But so I think that's the only hedge against that technology exponential curve concept is that like,
see,
in order for any society to get to that point, you'd have to avoid a good amount of existential threats that no other, nothing else that we know of was able to avoid. But I guess that goes back to, the idea of Mars and SpaceX and all this type of stuff too, right? Like if we want to continue civilization, we have to expand beyond just Earth, right?
Yeah.
Because inevitably.
And and you're getting me back in the Elon Musk world because that's just the biggest check I've ever wrote is just to SpaceX 4 months ago. And I'm so excited because to me, it's like, it's not just about going to Mars, but it's like, dude, Star Wars is our future. Like, as crazy as that sounds. And like the company that's building the railroads to space, to me, it's going to be one of the biggest companies in the future, trillions of dollars. Like, and it's even like, and I even think of aliens and Tesla. I don't know how in you are to the conspiracy theories of like, why do they want to keep this alien thing a secret? If they have a crashed UFO, they have this new propulsion technology, right?
Yeah,
that would
right.
change
the
society.
whole Area 51 Bob Lazar stuff with that special element and everything like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. So to me, Tesla is an investment in a new propulsion technology. It's my favorite way to look at it. It's that disruptive. Every single thing that moves in our economy, stuff, people, planes, boats, trains, whatever, it all moves on this really legacy propulsion technology that Elon Musk and his lab have already done one that's 10 times better. It's just about getting it to everything in the world. And so to me, like Tesla's, if I could sum it up in like one sentence, it's like you're investing in the alien technology of the future that will move all people and stuff around.
So what do you think we're going to see in our lifetime? I think we're the same age, and I'm curious what you think we're going to actually see in our lifetime from these innovations, what SpaceX is doing, what all these other companies are doing. What do you think that's going to look like when we're 75 years old?
Dude, the scariest thing that keeps me up at night is Neuralink. You know Neuralink?
Yeah.
Dude, so I went to the Neuralink event in San Francisco where they unveiled it like a year ago, I want to say. And it was like this theater that was like this IMAX thing. It was like totally like immersive. And it was straight out of a sci-fi movie. Like we're in these chairs, this dark room. It's like this computer voice. I'm like, your neurons firing are just electrical signals. And like Elon Musk comes out and, they do this whole Neuralink presentation about how essentially your phone, we're already cyborgs. We're going to put this in our brain as a chip. And then, you could record every memory, share every memory in 5 senses to anyone. Like it's just like texting or, Snapchatting or whatever, but just like 10 times more immersive. But to me, that's extremely scary and exciting. And that's where the future of societies is headed. And if I want to go all the way, it's like, well, is that the device you use to transfer your consciousness into a new body? That's the question I always think about of like, if I'm a technologist, like, are we going to be able to use technology to extend our life some way? Like, is Neuralink at the cutting edge of that? That's like inside your head excitement that I get excited about. But then it's like SpaceX, also Elon, but to me, equally exciting. Humans on Mars, like this is going to be like, I think we're genuinely going to live to see a colony not only get to Mars, but thrive on Mars. And that is going to be so inspiring. And to me, that's like what will inspire, our grandkids and their grandkids to go way beyond Mars. Like this is the first seed of that kind of, expansion as a species into to being multiplanetary. And that is so powerful. And I see that as so important. And I think all financial markets, this chaos, Bitcoin, the Fed, everyone's going to say, who gives a shit? Humanity's doing its biggest growth expansion ever. We're going to a new planet. That means we can go to the next planet. Every Wall Street banker with their spreadsheet just, their head exploded because they had to make infinite number of spreadsheets for an infinite number of planets. So to me, this is like the great kind of, if you were going to play a video game of humanity and go back in time for one moment to be alive during, I think it would be this moment. Maybe I'm biased because it's just the most advanced one right now, but it's like, bro, internet exists. crazy time to be alive. First time at a new planet. Like, I'm pumped. I feel like we are in a sweet spot, dude. I'm 27. I don't know how old you are,
I'm
but these
27
next
too,
50
yeah.
years, bro, this is the best movie that Netflix can't even scheme up.
No, that's what I
Like,
think too. That's why I wanted to know, how do you see this actually playing out? Because it feels like we're on the precipice of just enormous, just enormous change. And, the idea that
hyper change.
Yeah, hyper change, right. Shout out. TM. So how do you think Bitcoin plays into all of this in terms of, because I know earlier we were talking about, one of the things that's interesting about kind of the market forces that are playing out right now is, the reserve currency and the way that, that's going and everything else like that. I know you've talked a lot about Bitcoin in the past. I'm curious what you think about it right now and, how it plays into all of this stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I love Bitcoin. I've held it for years. I wrote about it when I was at NYU like 7 years ago when people thought I actually got like, there was my international finance class. They were talking about Bitcoin and it was the optional lecture the day before Thanksgiving. And I was like one of the 3 people who showed up and I was so pissed that they made it the optional lecture. Like
Right.
Everything else is mandatory. You get graded for attendance. Like today we're talking about Bitcoin, so nobody needs to show up. And I'm like, dude, this is the most important thing happening in international finance. And they're like, who owns Bitcoin? I'm like, me. Bitcoin's at 300. Literally laughed at. Like they're like, you actually fucking own some of this shit? Like and so I love Bitcoin as a concept. A piece of software is a new, I'm software eating the world. To me, that's the biggest innovation with the internet. And so currency, now it's paper, dollars, now dollars on our smartphone, but it's always been changing. Before it was like rocks, diamonds, gold, we would barter.
Yep.
To me, it's just what is kind of money. And I see Bitcoin coming at this from totally left field of an algorithm that's a piece of code that's limited, that's decentralized. Like it has all these new attributes. It's almost like gold 2.0 of this amazing store of value, but it's limited. We can't mine more of it after that 21 million mark. And me moving a rock around the world is really hard, but moving a piece of code with a click, even if it costs $50 on the Bitcoin network, is way cheaper than moving $10,000 worth of gold halfway around the world. And so I look at this as a much better, in terms of how humans store value over time, money. We have like dollars, we have stocks, we have real estate, we have gold, we have jewelry, we have art, collectibles, sneakers. That's another big thing I'm into. But
Wine.
I think Bitcoin comes into this equation. I'm like, okay, this algorithm that's like decentralized, this to me is going to take a huge chunk of that money ecosystem. And so my guess is gold is worth $7 trillion worth of gold. Most of that's held for investment in jewelry, also investment. If Bitcoin hits 7 trillion, you're looking at $300,000 Bitcoin with 21 million. So I think, but Bitcoin's better than gold. So I think Bitcoin becomes this new type of gold in our economy, and the value of that inflation hedge of a new gold is 15 to 20 trillion, which puts Bitcoin at about $1 million a coin. And that's kind of like how I see this all up, like $1 million in US dollar terms. But soon we're not going to be talking about Tesla in US dollars. We'll be quoting it in Bitcoin.
Right,
maybe,
right. And so do you think that that we need another, another asset like that? Because are there problems with the way that the access to gold or something like that creates a reason for Bitcoin to exist, or is it just we can always use another asset like that's got some sort of fixed intrinsic value to it because it's a set amount that can be mined, and there's I'm just
I had a really good quote that I'm trying to think of. Oh, this quote about Bitcoin, that it was like the most successful economic experiment ever, or like it was already a great success. Like it started as this economic. Right. And so what I was saying about markets kind of and just being a student of what's happening, like I've stopped trying to be like, oh, could something else replace Bitcoin or what's this? I'm like, Bitcoin is gaining market share in this financial monetary ecosystem faster than anything else. So I better start doing my homework on why that is, and just being a student of that data that's coming out that's saying Bitcoin is moving twice as much money as PayPal. And so, and it was created, within half the time. And it's so I think Bitcoin has been this wildly successful thing. I don't know. I'm curious. Do you own Bitcoin? Are you a believer? What's your take on it?
I have owned Bitcoin before. I don't own Bitcoin right now, but obviously, it's a really, really fascinating thing to me that I feel like I don't know enough about. But I when I think about the, I've heard you talk about it and compare it to gold in that way, and that makes inherent sense to me. I mean, I understand. I mean, one of the things that I really enjoy studying is like the idea of, currency and just money and all these different ways in history that we've kind of had money and used paper money and coins and, metals and all these different things to transact, right? And of course, when you have like a fiat currency like we do now, like the only thing that gives that any value is the fact that we all agree that there's value to it, and the government behind it. There is no reason that I can see where if we all agree that this is valuable, that doesn't work out and make sense, because that's the whole concept of money, right? I mean, gold is only valuable because we think it's worth something. Yeah. Yes, there's a finite amount of it, but we still have to like believe that it's valuable.
And our belief in what's valuable has changed over time based on what's the best mechanism of transferring value.
Right.
So I think that trust in Bitcoin it's going to have to grow and get there, and it's going to take a long time. But to me, like Square. So this is another way to frame my Bitcoin thesis. I think Jack Dorsey and Square and Cash App will single-handedly make Bitcoin take over because they have 33 million people on Cash App, growing like crazy. They're making it with a click of a button. You can buy Bitcoin. Jack Dorsey, also CEO of Twitter, one of the most important dudes in the world, is saying this is the, built for the internet currency. And Jack Dorsey is a hacker. Like, that's what I love about this dude. Like, he's coding shit himself, owner, operator, founder. But you think about Square's position. Like, why do we need Bitcoin? Square's paying like 3% to credit card companies for nothing on every single transaction. If you set up an online business, Stripe, Shopify, they're charging you 3%. They're not making that money. It's going to Visa, MasterCard, and all these pipes of the financial system, just taking this massive toll. So what Jack Dorsey's doing with Bitcoin is saying, wait, if we use this currency, we can build what's called a layer 2 solution. He's personally investing in all these apps that make it so you can like transact really cheaply and quickly on the Bitcoin network kind of for micro transactions. And all of a sudden you have 33 million wallets that are able to do all these transactions at Bitcoin, and the transactions mean we can avoid that 2.9% fee. So what did Cash App just do? They just dropped merch. They give you 25% off if you bought that merch within the Cash App. They're already making you pay just within their own ecosystem. So to me, this is a real world example of one of the most biggest world changing financial companies who has a huge incentive to use Bitcoin and strip out all of the financial pipes and put in Bitcoin because they're going to save 3% on $50 billion move last quarter. They're going to give half to their customers and keep the other half. So
yeah, I mean, that's all you need, right? Like you just need a real market using it to transact in a real significant way. And I think we're starting to really have that, and probably will have that more significantly in the coming years. And so I've been really considering getting back into it, and I think I'm going to now after this conversation, just because it's also
not financial advice.
No,
I never give financial advice.
Of course, and I certainly don't either. That's not my show. But I also think it's kind of another one of these bets on the future, bets on the change that we're talking about. It's, why not participate in it a little bit? And if it works out in an amazing way. And if it doesn't, then, I mean, I don't think anyone should be playing around in that world unless you can, you can afford to lose your shirt, right? Like that's always how I've seen it.
But I love that you're scheming on it, honestly, because that's one thing I think is interesting, and I'd be curious to get your take on like your kind of investing, your journey to becoming an investor as well. Because I think that's so cool, and like the fact that you kind of I see that you get what you don't know in some ways, and like to me, you're already 10 steps ahead of everybody on Wall Street by just being like, I kind of don't know shit. I'm just gonna dabble, try, and learn. And I love that mentality. When I see that, I'm like, bro, you're gonna go so far, and like that's exactly what we kind of need, That's how I started with Bitcoin. Put $50 in, and like now I give a shit. Now I'm reading all the news. Now I'm following it. I don't care if I lose $50, right. But that education is going to be worth thousands.
Totally. Yeah, a lot of things led me to this path of kind of being interested in finance. One, I think the most basic fact is that I've always been an entrepreneur, small business owner, running my own music business. So that's the ultimate startup to me. And since I was 16, I've been running that business as an entrepreneur. I would, the first thing that I did to get my music career going was me and my friend Alexi and my other friend Armand and my friend Duncan. We went to my house. We grabbed 400 blank CDs, burned 400 CDs, and passed them out and sold them for $2 at my school. And that trickled into making a mixtape, and then that trickled into we could use the internet to actually kind of circulate this a little bit more. And so then it was an internet business, and just one thing after another, and step by step. But that's just really being an entrepreneur at the end of the day. And so I was always kind of just interested in not just the music and the creativity, but the business idea of it, building something and figuring out how to build like a following And I see all those things as kind of the same thing. You know, that's what a company does. That's what a musician does. And so I've always kind of had that entrepreneurial bug. So then fast forward, I'm doing music. I'm you know, building my music career, having some good independent success. And then I get an opportunity to help my brother start an English muffin company. And I think I've told you the story a little bit because I know you like English muffins. So I get an opportunity to basically, you know, put a little bit of money into this English muffin company to get him going. And he starts this English muffin company in Boston called Stone and Skillet. It's now a company that's been around for 7 years, super successful, nationally distributed in Whole Foods, you know, a bunch of other, you know, huge grocery stores, and, you know, just going up and up and up. And so that was 2014. I kind of started being like, wow, you know, this is the same thing as building a music brand, you know, kind of, it's just a hustle. It's a bootstrapped grind. And I love that. And so I just got really interested in, you know, investing in that way. And that trickled into learning about investing in the stock market and reading, you know, all the classic books and just kind of understanding, you know, value investing and the fundamentals of, you know, the actual way to make money in the stock market, you know, as opposed to, I think, what's very popular right now, which is kind of just gambling. And I think that's well and fine. I think you just have to understand that that's what that is. Like there's no difference to me between Robinhood trading and sports betting. You know, it's all the same thing. Bro. So if you have play money to do that, that's totally fine. Like if you're like a Barstool Sports, like, you know, gambler or whatever, or you're like a Robinhood day trader, like whatever, it's all the same thing in my mind. But yeah, so I just started reading all these books and getting interested in it, and kind of started to understand, you know, that the less you trade, the more you make over time. And just, you know, it's just about, you know, buying companies that are worth something, right? And just holding on to stuff. And so I've been doing that over the years, and I've kind of fundamentally followed a similar approach, I would say, to you, which is trying to, you know, own companies that I believe have an intrinsic value that are just going to be around for my lifetime, like Tesla. I love Spotify, obviously, because I'm a musician, so I'm, you know, incredibly aware of their business model and how it works. And I have probably more of a fundamental understanding of Spotify's business than anyone on Wall Street. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So companies like that, and I've just been slowly kind of building my own portfolio and doing that. And it's just something that I'm interested in. And so I watch your content. I try and learn as much as I can. I read a lot about that type of stuff. I just do a lot of the research that I can, because it's just something that I'm interested in. And I understand that that's how you really just create, you know, wealth in this world, right? And I want, you know, bringing it back to you, I want to create, you know, just, you know, a good level of success in my life and wealth in my life, so that I can do something great with that, you know, just that level that I get to. And I think you mentioned that in your book too, which is, you know, you kind of wanted to, you know, get that level of power and influence, but in like a Robin Hood type of way. And I thought that was a really cool thing that you talked about. So that's how I got into it. I don't even remember what your original question was, but
no, that was it, bro. I love that, and I can't wait. I still haven't tried one of those English muffins. I'm beefing.
I know. You got to send me your address. You got to send me your address, and I'll get them out to you.
Yeah, dude, that's so cool that you say that, and I think, you know, what do you want to do with that? And I was having a really interesting conversation today. Like, you know, I don't want to get too philosophical, but it was like this guy asked me, like, you know, what's the end game here? What do you want to do with it? And what I kind of was writing in my book, it's like I feel like politicians aren't doing anything. Like I feel like not enough is getting done in the world. Like this Tesla, you know, electric cars, that was such a push to get done, and I feel like it just needed to happen, and like this change wasn't happening. And so that's like why I got so passionate behind Tesla, and like you know, just dedicated my life to following it and communicating it and literally doing anything I could to help the company succeed, because it was just so important, and like the future is only what we make it. And so I also love the lens of investing and like building our own wealth, but being a part of this creation of the future. Like to me, I look at my city and I'm inspired by the potential of like my book. I wrote these crazy hydroponic, you know, farms that are like bright colors that light up the skyline, that grow our food so we can reforest nature. Like to me, there's so many exciting ways our cities and like kind of world could change, and I didn't see it happening. And so that's why to me, I got really passionate about like, I'm going to do this, build up my snowball, get crazy successful. Sorry, fucking.
No worries.
but yeah, so I'm gonna build up my snowball, and then it's like fuck, like then you can actually do shit. And so now I'm really excited that I feel like I'm finally in that place of like the platform. I have like a lot of kind of announcements brewing that are the next phase of hyper change. Like, okay, this Tesla thing is done. Like Tesla's going to succeed. It's kind of financially locked in and secured. So I've been spending a lot of my time thinking about like what's the next big cause I want to push. Is it SpaceX and getting people like excited about that future about colonizing space? Is it the food system and all the waste that's happening there? How do we start investing and helping the companies in that space to reduce the waste there? Like, it's just really cool how not only you can invest in these companies, but I think Spotify should be having meetings with you. They should be like, yo, Cam, what's up? What do you think about this new feature? Like, and not only going to the table as, a customer or part of their platform, but also as an investor, as a stakeholder in the company. And that's the real future I see. I'm really pumped about this company called Carta. That's like a startup. And what I love the most about them is they're saying, create more owners and just like more people thinking with that owner mentality. Like, and kind of being a part of it. And that's what I really disconnected with NYU and finance culture. It was like people would invest in like Facebook, but they'll also talk to me about how they never use Facebook and they hate Mark Zuckerberg and he's an evil guy, but like the stock's at a low PE, so I'm buying it. And I'm like, bro, you're the fucking problem. Like, invest in the future you believe in. And so I think with a lot of power also comes a lot of responsibility. And so that's why I try and push that agenda of like, it's not just disconnected from your money, but there's a real like business behind every stock. And let's really think about where that goes and what you're supporting.
Totally. No, I love that. Another thing that I thought of while we were talking about this too is like this is something I think you'll find interesting. So I was for the most part of my career I've been independent, but I did one album with Warner Music Group back in 2013, and one of the interesting things about Spotify as a business is that Warner Music, Universal, Sony, obviously a ton of other parent companies that actually own the music companies, they've all been invested in Spotify in various ways over the years, right? And one of the arrangements early on that Spotify had was they kind of gave a lot of the licensing holders, like Warner Music and all these companies, equity in the company in exchange for licensing the music. And a couple years ago maybe, Warner Music sold out of their stake in Spotify, and they distributed all of that cash equally to their artists on a prorated basis in terms of like how many streams they got or what I don't know how they calculated it, but so one of the things that I've been spending the last few months kind of really figuring out what I wanted to do on this podcast, how I wanted to make it something that I enjoyed, that was unique to me and felt authentic. And, I kind of understood that, not everybody that listens to my music or is already a subscriber to me is necessarily interested in finance. Maybe they're music people, but these things all coexist. And I thought about that when I got that check from Warner Music. They gave me essentially my capital gains on the Spotify position that they were holding on my behalf, right? And
that's so dope.
And so but I also thought of it in this way where I was like, all these other artists on their repertoire are getting this check and might not even know, they might not even see it. A lot of artists don't even look at their own royalty statements, and the music industry is just there's a lot of people who aren't necessarily, kind of aware of some of these, financial things that are going on. And so it's a world where there's a lot of predatory behavior, where there's, business managers coming in and, like, for example, you come from the world of finance. So, when you manage someone's money in the financial world, you charge 1-2% at the most, right? But when you manage someone's money in the music business world, you charge 5%. And that's extremely unfair, but musicians will accept that because they don't know any better. And so I part of me when starting this show and just wanted to talk to a wide variety of people like you, is I kind of wanted to just start talking about some of these concepts so people are a little bit more aware, especially if there are other independent artists or up and coming artists that are listening or whatever, to just have some sort of fundamental understanding of some of these financial concepts, because it's there, right? And so, if you had gotten that Spotify check, first of all, that's a long-term capital gain. You should have paid capital gains tax on it, not, royalty tax on it. But, maybe a lot of people didn't do that. And also, you could have reinvested that and continued to let it ride. Or, maybe you didn't want to sell. Like maybe you could have told Warner Music, like, I don't want to sell my Spotify stock. Just give me the stock. Right. And so, yeah, I don't know. It just made me think. And so when I started, putting the whole plan together for this show, I just decided that I wanted to talk about all that stuff to just kind of let people know that this is the world we're in.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more, bro.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
And yeah, holding that Spotify stock would have been an epic move. And actually, one thing I really wanted your take on is like, to me, Spotify is like a baby. Like what they could do for independent musicians is just nowhere near like what it could be. And I'm curious about this idea of investing in your favorite artist. This is like a moonshot I made of like, what if I want to put money towards Cam Meekins' next project? Like I can help you pay for studio time, videos, whatever. And then I can get a cut back of those royalties all on the Spotify platform. Like it's kind of securitizing your music in a kind of Kickstarter 2.0 way, but just all on Spotify feels like huge potential. So I'm curious if you've thought about something like that.
Oh, totally. Well, so you may or may not know, there's so much disruption happening in that world of music royalties, people buying in. Obviously, you know about Patreon and like all these other platforms, OnlyFans. Like there's all these kind of interesting dynamics that are happening in the idea of like paying your favorite content creators to create content. And then there's also this music industry private equity phenomenon that's happening where people are looking at music catalogs as a financial asset that you can buy into and even potentially trade. And so there's companies like Royalty Exchange and a bunch of other companies that are starting to kind of securitize music royalties. And then there's companies like Patreon and other companies where if you're an artist, you can start to get, more consistent revenue just interacting directly with your fan base. So there's like all of these different ways that this is happening. And it would only make sense that over time that would consolidate into one, cohesive idea, right? And maybe Spotify could hold all of that stuff, right? Like you could pay monthly to your favorite artists via Spotify and get, exclusive music, exclusive merchandise, live streams with them, whole bunch of stuff. Like why do I have to have one thing on Patreon, sell my royalty assets through Royalty Exchange and, sell my music on Spotify and it's all kind of fragmented and all over the place. I could totally see, shout out to the moonshot, this idea where that all comes together. And I think, I've got a lot of ideas as to like where I think Spotify is going. I mean, it feels like to me they're going to kind of compete on a video level too, and I think that goes back to this idea of kind of, when we were talking about like the MP3 and all this stuff, it's much more, doable now to have video capability in a less, less data way, where I think a company like, or an application like Spotify can provide video in such a easy way now that they might start to compete with Netflix and YouTube and everything else. Obviously, you're just seeing that with like the Joe Rogan podcast where they're having the full video on Spotify now. Obviously, eventually you would think that they're going to roll that out to everybody, right?
Totally.
So,
and it's also like, why can't they pick a dozen artists and just start doing this? Like start dropping the exclusive merch, I think this is like, I'm waiting for this news to drop.
Yeah, it's really interesting. But Spotify is an interesting one though, because they have kind of in the past, I think kind of like, thrown a bunch of stuff at the wall and seen what sticks. And again, this is what I was saying. Like, I feel like I know Spotify's, inner workings more than, any Wall Street stakeholder in Spotify, because, one thing they were doing for a while, which I think I even talked to you about at one point on the phone, was like they were doing, you can upload directly through Spotify and Spotify was going to pay you royalties directly. And so they were beta testing this thing where artists can upload their music directly to Spotify and just bypass the distributor. So you don't need to use a TuneCore or a record label or anything like that. You can go straight to Spotify. And for a while, 3, 4, 5 years ago, everyone was talking about how like Spotify's going to start signing artists. Spotify's going to start, signing artists to deals. And, I don't think that has happened yet, nor maybe will ever happen, because they don't want to step on the toes of these licensing agreements with these old catalogs. So as long as Universal and Warner Chappell Publishing and all these huge publishing companies own the music of the past, Spotify's not going to do anything to get into a complicated situation with them, because they want to license that music. Because if they don't have the catalogs of all of the music in the world, they're no longer valuable.
Yeah. And it feels like 5 years ago, they were bullying Spotify. Now it slowly feels like Spotify is going to start bullying them.
For
which
sure.
I think has been slow kind of indication of that transition of power.
For sure. But the thing that they're holding on to is that they still own the historical music.
They still basically got Spotify. That's the thing. It's such a like delicate game that Daniel Ek's playing, I feel like.
Right.
And I feel like the winner in all this is the artist. To really tie it back like to what you're doing.
Yeah.
Like, I think that is the value of music is extremely underpriced, but that's changing in 5 years,
Absolutely. We are, and I know you've said this before too. There's no reason that, an album needs to be what an album is. There's, music is changing. Obviously we've seen all the various changes in music over the last few years, and now TikTok is one of the biggest ways to discover music. And, people who are welcoming that with open arms and are taking advantage of that as independent artists and just trying to create and work within the Spotify system to just make music and have fun are the ones that are winning. And that's a beautiful thing, I think. It's democratized the way that people can become successful. You don't need a label. You can just do stuff from your house. It's an amazing time. So I completely agree with you on the concept that like this is the best time in the world to be around, to be creative, to get your content out there, whether you're a musician, whether you're doing something like you're doing. This is the best time to do it so far. And so I know that he caught a lot of heat for saying artists need to get with the program and just stop thinking they can make one album a year and then it's all going to be good. And I get that. I mean, on the one side, I'm an artist, and it's hard to hear a executive tell you something about something that's creative, but on the other hand, it's not wrong. It's not wrong. And there are people out there who are willing to do it, guys like my homie Chris Webby, and obviously like Russ was a pioneer of like that whole concept. And I've done that a lot in my career, is just consistently put out a ton of music, and that model works with the platform that we currently have. And these things will change over time, but you just have to have your kind of ear to the street on what's going on, and just continue to find new ways to work within it. And I imagine it's the same thing with YouTube and what you're doing too. You know what I mean? You have to be aware of, the way that people are consuming content. And, when you run a media company as you do, if it's okay for me to frame it in that way, you want to be aware of that. And I'm curious, I guess, maybe how, that's a good question for you. How do you see, what you're doing with YouTube? Do you really kind of look at it in a very kind of thought out way, or is it just this platform where you like to just, kind of be yourself and not try and, think too much about the stuff that you're putting out, and just kind of, go with the flow of what's happening in your world and what you want to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, it's super a document, not create strategy for me. So it's very like, what's in my world? I don't even know my next video is going to be, I probably should be planning it out more, but YouTube, the way I kind of think of myself as a creator is just the same way I would think about you and music. It's like, okay, I'm making money on YouTube now with YouTube ads. Patreon is even bigger than YouTube, but then I have, huge presence on Twitter that's growing. We do a little Instagram. I'm totally sloughing on TikTok, but I should be there too. We do Spotify with the audio only version of the podcast. So I think I'm only getting paid for 2 of those. I'm about to drop my merch thing. Like, I just think it's so exciting, because I still think I'm still being so I'm paying my bills now, which I love, and I feel so privileged, but I'm like, deep down, I'm like, bro, this is so underpaid. Instagram's going to roll out monetization. The audience just gets bigger. Like, the amount of what I'm doing with like my VC firm with Hyperguap, I think is so unique, of like leveraging my audience to just piggyback on investments with me. Like, so not related to YouTube, but also so related to YouTube because I built my whole audience there, and that's the audience I'm porting over for my investing kind of stuff. So when we go back to like, it's just your creativity. Like, it's such a good time to be this kind of artist and I look at what you do very similar. Like I put out a file that's an MP4 file and it's an MP3 when I do the podcast. That's the same thing you're doing. It's just totally different. But we're both trying to get people to listen to it or whatever, you know? And
100%.
so
Yep.
for people in that business, to me, it's the holy grail of like, I'm not making stuff. I'm not, you know, cranking out like a blacksmith making swords every day. Like I make this one thing and at the click of a button, it can be distributed to the whole wide world. And so that is like, I think about that every day, and like that's why I love my investing ideas. But I want to do like stand-up comedy. I really wanted to get into that before like the whole pandemic and try and do that. And I just think like making beats. I've started to make beats for some of my videos. Like these, as much as they're totally different from what I do, I see them as actually being so similar and kind of adjacent, and like my next creative moves.
Well, yeah.
And so
No, finish your thought.
yeah, so I just feel like I convince every single one of my homies to start a YouTube channel. That's like my pitch to everybody. It's like, bro, like be yourself, put yourself online. Like I just can't even fathom the like conversations that you'll have, the people you'll meet, the ways your life will change. And so as I just really believe it, even if it's corny and like whatever, you know?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I don't even think we've scratched the surface at like the world we're going to live in, where we just, you know, everybody's, you know, if they want to, they can create, you know, a platform, and, you know, you can have a following for whatever the topic is. There's a niche out there for you, right? I'm curious how you got into making beats though. I love that, man.
Dude, yeah, that's been a big like, you know, I always loved music, and like I even made a GarageBand mixtape with my friend in 5th grade for our parents, so like as our Christmas present.
That's
so we
how
didn't
I
have to
started,
get them
dude.
a Christmas present.
I love that.
But yeah, just like always loved hip hop, and like you know, just kind of lost that when I got in the finance game. And like I don't know, if I always felt like I had like I would start clothing brands. I started like 4 t-shirt companies that all failed, you know? And like it's and I always had like a homie who was the designer. Like I always felt like I was the business guy, never the art guy. And it was always like me trying to also do the designs, but like I needed a homie to be the designer to validate it. Like I don't know, it was just this weird creative block of like I was a business person, not a creative person, and that was really blocking me into what I was doing. And so I've just kind of recently had that real kind of like moment of like, no, like I am that creative artistic person as well. Like, and I love music, and I think as much as my videos are informative about news, like I view them as art too. And like, you know, they're my poetic rants or whatever, but like I want to put my own beats to them. I only use my homies beats until you know, I started taking like private Ableton classes, like kind of for fun, like 3 years ago.
Yep.
And I loved it. And so like got a private teacher or whatever, and like started making beats. And now 3 years later, like I finally feel like I'm good enough to put my beats in my own videos. And like my favorite thing is like people almost don't even notice. They're like, dude, this was such a fire video. And I'm like, you don't even know that was all like my beats I produced from scratch. Like, and it just seemed like it was a dope video. You didn't even notice it was like some DIY shit, you know? So
Yeah.
that makes me feel like so good in some ways. But that's kind of a weird way as a creator that I've invested into myself with zero ROI and nobody even noticing or caring. I have 16 followers on SoundCloud, but it really like that's one way that my content's kind of evolved recently that I'm really happy about.
Well, it's vertical integration too, right? You know, you got this closed loop type of situation. If you're producing the video, they're producing the music behind it. You know, you're doing all the content. I mean, I love that. It's the same, you know.
Yeah.
That's what I've built my whole world on, is just trying to kind of keep everything as in house as possible, because I just think that things are more authentic when it's like that. You know, I think that, you know, what you're doing can feel more authentic because it's your music that you envision to be, you know, the backtracking to what you're doing. That's super cool. Were you ever like playing musical instruments growing up at all, or did you just, this is a relatively
I played trumpet in 3rd grade, and then like by 5th grade, everyone gets to advanced of their instrument. I was like the one 5th grader who got put in intermediate and like never got pushed up. And then I had to get into choir in high school for my art credit. And I remember they were like told me I was tone deaf. And they even like they tried to let me beatbox for a little, and then like I sucked at that too. So they just like God, just like be quiet, you know?
Right.
But so I feel like I was never like I don't know, but it's just recently, like I've always loved the hip hop and beat side of it, and like been just a fan of that. As like I love Kanye West and like vertical integration. Like I have so much respect for Kanye West because everything he does is a new sound, and he makes the beats, and like it's just such his pure creative vision. And whether you can hate on that or not, like to me, I'll score an album on how pure that creative vision of that artist was and how
100%.
bold and unique that was. And to me, that's why like I really like. You know, so that's like with my videos, I want to do vertical integration, and like for this electric boat company I invested in, I made this super dope documentary about them. And I was like making this beat where I was overlooking like Lake Union, which is where their startup is, and they have these electric boats. And I like composed this whole beat, and like it's called Floaty, and that's the beat with them. And I got to like send them like, I'm like, how many of your investors like not only made you a documentary, but also made you like a beat to go with it, like just inspired by how dope you were. And so I don't know if that's the future, but like, I don't know. It's kind of like my special gift that I give to companies now is I'm like, bro, if your video was dope enough, like, and I was inspired enough, I really like wanted to give you this as an extra present that you can do whatever with.
Hell yeah. I love that, dude. I love that, man. So I think I got one last kind of big question for you. So, if you were kind of ruling the world right now, how would you expedite the hyper change that you're talking about? Do you see things like the traditional fossil fuel industry and all these forces as these stopgaps to the change that you're talking about? How do we get people more aligned on this vision that people like you and the Elon Musks of the world have? What's your magic wand approach?
Dude,
big question.
That is such a tough question. I'm like, more people paying attention to Elon Musk, I think is half of it. Just general positivity and optimism, I feel like is what people can do on their own level. But like, if you put me in government, like I'm immediately taxing fossil fuels, subsidizing green energy, promoting reforestation, wildlife at all costs. We're protecting that. I'm immediately federally legalizing marijuana, taxing that. That'll be a massive new revenue stream, funding it all into education, make our teachers extremely highly paid, put our teachers on a pedestal in terms of society, as that should be way more important than fucking Goldman Sachs guy. You know what I mean? And I just think there's kind of a rethinking of that. And a big opportunity I see in the world, I don't know how to describe this, but like community. This is something I think about a lot. Community's lost. And I think that's why we all get caught up in this group Twitter think, and a lot of people feel lost about their purpose, because in the past, like if you're in this tiny village, everyone knows each other, like you wake up on the street, everyone says, what's up? Like, I feel like I don't have that. And no one in America has this like cool little community anymore. So that's a big problem that I would want to change as well. I also think like cars suck, and the fact that our cities are hideous, like it's all cement everywhere. Architecture is garbo. Like we should be giving way more money to like beautiful, like everybody should go to Rome. Like I'm Italian, I love Rome. Like let's everybody take a trip to Rome, get inspired, and like let's build something beautiful that we can be proud of. That's incredible. Like I don't know. I feel like art is really suffering, creativity is suffering, like, and that's leaching into the negativity of society. And so that's why I love Patreon. And I have the CEO of Patreon on my podcast. I'm like, bro, you're creating the second Renaissance. Artists are getting paid. This is like the spark of creativity our society needs. So I don't know. There's no magic wand though. I wish I had a better answer. And I also think the sustainable sort of micro housing unit, that's sustainable energy to make everyone who is homeless have somewhere to live. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I just want to hear you talk about these ideas, because of course there's no magic wand, but I think when we have these conversations, we maybe move a little bit farther down the field, right?
Totally. We should be thinking about it.
Yeah.
Everyone should be thinking, like, honestly, now I'm like, that was a great question. Like,
yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm just curious because I think there's so much, back and forth about kind of just like the random day-to-day stuff. But when you kind of take a step back and look objectively, like how do we really get there? Like, the possibilities are there, and I think it starts with talking about it and theorizing it and having visionaries, on many different levels. And I think you're one of those people. And yeah, I appreciate having this conversation, man. And shout out to Italy too, because I was in Italy last summer and that was the best trip of my life, man. Italy is fucking beautiful.
yeah, hell yeah, dude! I'm so honored to be on this show, bro. This has been such a fun scheme sesh, and I do love to make moonshot predictions. And mine is that this podcast is going to be huge for you,
dude.
And I think you got a real knack for podcasting, and you're going to be really good at it. And like, I'm just pumped that you're kind of launching a new type of content format. I think it's going to be dope.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate that. And I'm trying to work out the kinks. I'm trying to, just kind of figure it out. And so, like I said, I appreciate you being one of the early guests, kind of, just figuring this out with me. And I had a lot of fun doing it, man. So it means a lot coming from you, man. Hyperchange, one of my biggest inspirations. Galileo Russell, the man, the myth, the legend. Appreciate you coming on, man.
Thank you so much, bro.
Yes,
Honored
sir.
to be here.
Peace.